Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. It's finished. It's been out for a week. I understand. I know. I'm late. I am so bad. I just actually had to binge through the show in like the last 12 hours because I actually didn't see any other episodes after the first two. And that's not because I didn't like it. It's just I got off track. So I apologize, but I think this is the best Spider-Man show we've gotten in almost 20 years. Disney has given us, finally, a good Spider-Man show. And I wouldn't even just say it's good. I would say it's great. So I'm going to give you my review of the full season today. And yes, obviously, spoilers. It's been out for a week. You can go check it out on Disney Plus if you want to. I would recommend it. You should definitely go check it out. If you're a Spider-Man fan, I think you'll really enjoy it. It really is much better than any of the trailers gave it credit for, as I said in my review of the first two episodes. But let's go ahead and get talking about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.
Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, now streaming.
So yes, like I said, this is the best Spider-Man show we've gotten in 20 years. As I've said in my review of the first two episodes of the show, I was a Spectacular Spider-Man Generation Spider-Man fan. Not was, is. I grew up on Spectacular Spider-Man. I think still that is probably the best iteration of the character outside of the comics. You know, I think Josh Keaton as Spider-Man was great. And to see him in the finale was great. I know we're already jumping into the last episode, but I really enjoyed this show. I really enjoyed Spectacular Spider-Man. It was great. I think it was, it had the best cast. It had the best characterizations, except for maybe Kraven the Hunter. But that was just my favorite. I don't know. It's a lot of other people's favorites too. I think it's great. And I think this is about as close as we've gotten to that show. Not in the sense that it's similar in any way, because it's very much differentiates itself from Spectacular Spider-Man, but in the sense of quality and having a good quality Spider-Man show. And it's also set in the MCU, but it also feels so distinctly like it's contained in its own story. I think that's something that it did very well. Whereas in the show, we're dealing with the ramifications of the Sokovia Accords, and we have characters discuss that, and we see the airport scene with Spider-Man not present. But it still feels connected into the MCU, but it also is kind of its own distinct Spider-Man story, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the show. I think it was really well done. Like, the writing was great. I thought the characters were cool. It was different versions of what we've seen before, and I think it's so ironic that like Scorpion was such a big deal. Like, that was so funny to me, considering that that's probably one of the biggest cliffhangers that we've gotten in the MCU was at the end of Homecoming when the Vulture was talking to Scorpion and he was like, yeah, we're going to break out and we're going to take down Spider-Man. And then we just haven't seen him since. And now in Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, he was like one of the biggest villains of the show. So that was really cool. And I thought that was a nice kind of callback to that lingering plot thread. And that's one of the greatest parts of the show, I think, that I stated in my first initial video, is that it uses your knowledge of Spider-Man pre-existing to its advantage. Like, it knows that you know the tropes, and it kind of has the upper hand in that sense, where it kind of is able to predict what you're wanting or what you're expecting, and then it subverts your expectations in a way that feels thought out and, that felt like it had some care and passion behind it. And that's what I really enjoyed about it. One of the things. I enjoyed a lot of things about it. I thought the action sequences, especially, once you get into the other episodes, were really great. I thought the action was cool. It was well paced, and it was dynamic, and there was cool parts to it. It was all the action sequences I thought really worked and really stuck the landing for me. The one thing that I still never got on board with, was the animation. I think this should have been 2D animated. It should have been hand-drawn. Should have been not 3D animated, because it just still looks off-putting. Sometimes it looks okay. Some angles it looks fine, but most of the show, I was just sitting there like, it looks cheap. It looks, not fleshed out. It looks like something that shouldn't be coming out in the year 2025. It was jarring. It was weird. Like, I just don't know, man. I know that they're going for a distinct style, and the distinct style worked sometimes. And it was cool sometimes with the stylistic choices they made in terms of lighting or character backdrops and stuff like that. But most of the time, it was just like, I just don't think 3D models should be moving in this space. Like, you can tell that it's a 3D model that's been designed to look like it's hand-drawn, and that look that I didn't enjoy personally. And I don't think it's something that's super major, and obviously, since I watched the whole thing, it's not something that's a turnoff, but it is just something I never got on board with. I think that they can find ways to improve it. I think there's a better way to do what they're trying to do. They should maybe go for a different look, maybe for season 2. But even there, whenever there's a TV screen or something on a screen, it's like 2D hand-drawn, and it's like these 3D characters are looking at it. And when characters are just moving around talking to each other, it's surprisingly stiff. You can see where the imperfections are in like the models, I feel like. it just, I just feel like they didn't fully perfect what they were going for with the look. Maybe that's what they were going for, and I just didn't like it. But I don't know. It just felt a little cheap and a little just weird. I don't know. I get what they were going for, and I see what they're going for, and I like what they were going for with this 60s kind of aesthetic, but Steve Ditko kind of drawing, but it didn't work for me. I never got on board with it the whole show. I kind of got used to it, I guess, but I didn't really ever, like it. But I like the way that we have these characters turning in the show, where they set them up. Well, even we saw them in the first 2 episodes, and I was kind of talking about this, but we see characters that are set up for who we know they're going to be, like Lonnie Lincoln. We see his storyline as he slowly gets involved with the 110th, 1 in 10th gang, 110th, the 110 gang, and then he slowly is turning into Tombstone. By the end, you see his fingers have the tips of his fingers are white, so maybe he's going to turn into the classic look of Tombstone. So that was really cool. I really liked Lonnie's storyline, how Peter and him are friends, and then they meet in school and they're friends, and then he kind of goes down this darker path and slowly kind of changes into Tombstone. So that'll be interesting to see how that turns out in season 2. I'm really excited about that. But they're clearly, they've already gotten to season 2, and they're planning for season 3 as well. So there's definitely going to be more of this show, and I'm not complaining because I think that there's a lot more that they can do, and I'm really interested to see what else they have in store. But the whole multiverse, Spider-Verse thing where Spider-Man kind of is inadvertently responsible for his own origin story, I thought it was, at the very least, a very interesting choice that they made, to where he is with Doctor Strange, and then Doctor Strange goes back in time and causes Peter to become Spider-Man. So he gets bitten with a spider that's injected with his blood from the future. It was a distinct choice. It was a unique choice. I don't know exactly what that. I liked it actually, because it's kind of like we learned this in the final episode. The final episode is called "If This Be My Destiny," which is a quote from the comics. And it's kind of like reinforcing this idea. I don't know if you're one of the fans of the tropes of like Peter Parker was always destined to be Spider-Man. Some people don't like that. I don't mind it. And especially Spider-Man's little speech that he gives there at the end, where he says things that are supposed to happen will always happen, and they'll always find a way to happen, and they'll make us who we're supposed to be. He says, I think this is who I'm supposed to be. That nice little speech there with Doctor Strange I thought was really cool. And it really kind of reinforces this idea that Peter Parker was destined to be Spider-Man. And all across the multiverse, however that happens, it'll always find a way to happen, because Peter Parker should be Spider-Man. Now, when you think in context of Miles Morales or Gwen Stacy or all of these other people, I don't know how you think about that, but it certainly is. I enjoyed that little twist on his origin story, at least it's different. And the thing about the show is that it does do all these different things, but it still gives you the classic moments that you want to see, much more than Tom Holland's Spider-Man ever did. So I really appreciate that. Like, even though it's a new, fresh take on the character, and he's got new, fresh accompanying people who are around him, and they're characterized in different ways. And like Uncle Ben died before he got his powers. That's not something we usually see in Spider-Man. It still gives us some of those, it just still understands the character so much that it gives us what we all want to see in Spider-Man, in his origin story of him first learning to discover his powers, and then testing out different suits, which, yes, were kind of references to the comics, but we're clearly just like, let's shove in as many comic suits as we can in this one episode. So that was kind of whatever. I like the inclusion of Daredevil, Charlie Cox. It was fun to see him, and it was fun to hear Charlie Cox's voice as Daredevil. That was a cool inclusion. I wasn't expecting to see that, even though they posted the whole fight scene on YouTube. But his character was cool. Doctor Strange was cool to see as well as his inclusion, and I liked the turn of Norman Osborn as he's kind of, when he starts teaching Peter, he seems like a nice guy, and he seems like he's going to be someone who's going to help him, kind of like a Tony Stark figure. And we know that he's Norman Osborn, therefore he's going to be the Green Goblin. So we're kind of watching for that. But we see the progression of it as it goes, as he kind of turns and slowly is kind of twisting Peter's philosophy to where we get the classic line, with great power comes great respect, instead of with great power comes great responsibility. Because for some reason Disney just doesn't ever, at least Marvel Disney doesn't ever want to say with great power comes great responsibility. I don't think they're allowed to say it. So It just kind of funny, and we kind of the way that they like kind of subtly, slowly had Norman Osborn reveal that he's maybe not the best person was kind of interesting. How he wasn't automatically just, oh, I'm a big bad villain, and he's kind of slowly we can decide for ourselves that he's probably not who he's cracked up to be. In terms of when Daredevil says he's hiding something, and just in the way that he talks to Peter and the way that he has him do certain things, it just seems like. Is that right? I don't think so. So we can kind of discover that for ourselves. I really liked the dialogue, between characters. It felt good. It felt well written. The show felt like it was definitely thought out. There was some time and effort put into it to make it something special. And it wasn't just something that was rushed out for the sake of getting something out. It's one of those things that like it took a long time to make, and it went through a lot of development changes to where it was going to be originally, a Tom Holland prequel show, and then it was changed to separate universe, and it was like, what does that mean? Why does this matter? Now I know why it matters, because not exactly is it supposed to be the MCU's like flagship Spider-Man, but it definitely, utilizes the character and shows us those classic Spider-Man iconography and moments that we want to see in a way that's fresh and new, but also feels familiar, and something that we've seen before, and something in a way that feels natural and feels like it's true to the character. Usually, if it's taken this long to come out and they're spending this much time on it behind the scenes, reworking it and changing it and figuring out what they want to do. Usually, like Captain America Brave New World, in my opinion, the final product is kind of mediocre, or it shows as something that was tampered with and changed, and the MCU committee steps in and makes it what they want to make it in the larger scheme of the universe, and kind of takes away from the showrunner or the director or whoever had the idea. But this wasn't that at all. It was something that really felt like there was some passion and there was some thought put into it. And the characterizations feel natural. I like the way that different characters interact, or that they exist in the same space before they become or interact with the people that we're used to seeing them interact with. It utilizes some pretty obscure Spider-Man villains, like we got Speed Demon in there, like the Unicorn, just different people that you don't normally see. And it's not just the same classic, Sinister Six or the Venom or Green Goblin or the classic Spider-Man villains that we always see all the time. And it finds a way to utilize different characters and different moments and make them still feel natural and Spider-Man-esque. And it's the most Spider-Man that Disney's ever gotten. Because on the topic of good Spider-Man shows, Spectacular Spider-Man was 2008, 2009, taken from us too soon. Oh, I just wish we had more of it. And then we had Ultimate Spider-Man, which was kind of the Disney replacement to Spectacular Spider-Man. So it was kind of hated on, not just because it was okay, like it wasn't bad, but it was also came after what most considered to be the greatest. So that's why a lot of people hated on it. And then after that, we got Marvel's Spider-Man from Disney, which was just not good. So finally, Disney has given us a Spider-Man show that is great, I would say. I would say that in the way that it shows the character and gives Spider-Man this really strong origin story that stands on its own and feels fresh and different, while also, kind of loosely being connected to the MCU, but doesn't pull on those strings too much to where it bogs down the series itself. But it actually, gives Spider-Man his own 2 feet to stand on and has him discover who he is on his own, with his own identity, with minimal help from a mentor figure. But he really feels like he's his own and he's his own character. That is something I think is really special, and it feels like this world that's populated with other heroes, but you really spend a lot of time with Spider-Man and with Peter Parker, and those relationships, and you focus on those classic Spider-Man moments where he's late for class, or he's juggling with his responsibilities and the weight of his dual life that he's living. That's something that we always want to see from Spider-Man. That's what makes the character so relatable to us, is that he has all these different responsibilities, but he's able to juggle them. He has this immense responsibility, but he uses it for the good of others, and he uses it selflessly. And the show really props up Spider-Man as a character, as a role model. Because I guess it is kind of supposed to be a kids show. There was more like swearing than I normally see in a kids show. Not that it was like bothering me or anything, like it's anything to call home about, but like I was thinking, like it is a kids show, and it's like it's noticeable at the very least. I don't know if like what the intention was if it is supposed to be a kids show, like for kids, or I don't know. Like I don't know who the target audience is, but it's definitely one that they're marketing as the Spider-Man show that they want to be moving forward. And hey, I couldn't be more fine with that, because the designs look cool. I like Harry's relationship with Peter, because we want to see Harry and Spider-Man being friends. So even though they took him away from Midtown High and put him in, like Redford Pines or whatever, and gave him different friends, we still get that Harry Osborn friendship, which we missed from the Tom Holland version. And I think that's one of the strongest parts of the show as well, is the Harry Osborn relationship with Peter, and the kind of dynamic of Norman, Harry, and Peter all being connected. I didn't know how I feel about him revealing his identity to both Harry and then to Nico as well within a short span of time. I just didn't know, it was just a little quick for me. I was like, whoa, are we going to tell everyone now? And then we didn't. So I don't know how many more people he's going to tell about his identity, but it just is nice to be, in the beginnings of a Spider-Man story again, to see a fresh take on it, and to see these early moments of him trying to work out his powers, trying to juggle his school and his Spider-Man life and his relationships, and that's just good stuff to see. It's always nice to see that again when it's done well. It's done in a way that feels human and authentic, which I think this show really does. I think they really balanced that well. Now, the thing about the show that is kind of was a criticism that I had was that we didn't get to see very much of him in the Oscorp internship. Like, the Oscorp internship kind of became him being Spider-Man, and then all of a sudden he was working on this magnetic generator that we kind of saw sometimes, but we didn't see a ton of him doing that. Anime also wasn't involved a ton in the show, which I guess isn't a problem, but it is just something that I noticed that, like, she didn't have a huge role. The change of the Scorpions being a gang instead of just the Scorpion was kind of interesting, and it made for a cool storyline with Lonnie Lincoln and Matt Gargan. And the thing that the show uses to advantage is that since it kind of carved its own path and, like, gave us these unique moments and storylines, it did genuinely, have me questioning where they were going to go. Like when Spider-Man was fighting Scorpion and he gets beat up at the end of episode 7, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where this is going to go or what this is going to mean. It kind of, since it kind of pulls the rug out from under you, it kind of is able to maneuver around to these different storylines and keep you on the edge of your seat a little bit because you're not expecting what's going to happen next. And every time they did do that, what happened next was, better than what I was expecting. So that's something that I've said I repeatedly enjoy about the show. But just, yeah, it takes its time with setting up characters and letting them fall and letting them go down the path that we want to see them go down and that we know they're going to go down. But it does it in a way that is fresh and makes you, kind of question where they're going to go or if even what is useful in this scenario because they could be changing it. And every time they do change something, it feels, like a fresh new take that doesn't subtract from the source material. And that's something that I think is really, really powerful. And I think that's what made for such a great show. I mean, it's only 10 episodes. Each episode is 30 minutes. That seems like a great length. Each episode kind of was tight. It didn't linger. It didn't drag on. It got right to the point. The fight scenes were really cool. Again, the fight scenes were really cool. Spider-Man swinging around and, how he used his webs, how he fought the villains. It was just, it felt very dynamic, and I liked that. It's surprising that every other scene in the show didn't feel like that, but whenever there was a fight scene, it felt good. And sometimes there were parts where the animation was choppy. Like I said, I just can't get on board with it. If you're on board with it, let me know, but I just couldn't. It wasn't something that I was like, yes, this is what I want to. It was just whatever. But I do like the characterization of Peter Parker. Hudson Thames as Peter. I thought he did a good job. He doesn't feel like he's trying to imitate Tom Holland. The performances from all the cast were great. Doc Ock was cool. That scene where he took out all the cops. But we didn't even fight Doc Ock yet. He just was set up for the next season. So it definitely leaves you with wanting to see where they're going to go next. And how all of these different characters are going to turn out to be who we want them to be. So it definitely got me interested. It piqued my interest, especially at the end with Richard Parker. Have we seen the parent storyline a little bit too much, maybe? Yeah, I don't know. But Josh Keaton returning as Richard Parker was such a cool moment. And it's almost like a pseudo metaphorical sense of Spectacular Spider-Man being almost like a father to this Spider-Man show. In the way that the creators did say they were inspired by Spectacular Spider-Man. And you can kind of feel that. I did kind of feel that in some of the scenes in this where Peter's like looking at the menu and he doesn't want to order because it's too expensive. Like just all of the references, like they understood what they were doing. It felt like the creators were fans. It's not something that you feel that often when it comes to these nerdy fandoms nowadays. It just feels like this person was brought in to check some boxes and it doesn't seem like they were really interested in the source material, but I felt like these creators were, and that they respected it and that they wanted to do it justice. And I think they did. I think it was done justice entirely. And I really was impressed with how the show was handled. And the different characters that are populating this universe. We have the Chameleon out there, and we don't have to rush to them, meeting Spider-Man and being defeated yet. We just got to know that they're out there. And we're going to slowly watch them become who they're supposed to become. And that's something that Spectacular Spider-Man, I think, did really well. So I'm excited to see that. And they definitely set up a lot for the next season. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to do. There's my thoughts on Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I think it's the best Spider-Man show we've gotten in almost 20 years. I don't think it's as good as Spectacular Spider-Man, but it's definitely, I don't know if I'd say right up there, but it's pretty close. I think it was very good. And I'm very excited to see what they're going to do next. I was pleasantly surprised. I was blown away with just how well written the show was. So let me know what you thought of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Did you enjoy it as much as I did? Because I really found myself enjoying it. And after every episode being like, oh, yeah, that was good. If I did have to pick a weakest one, it would be episode 4, just because that was just a show off of the suits, which is fine. But every other episode was pretty much like, yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. And I'm interested to see what happens next. So yeah, let me know what you thought down below. And be sure to check out my other videos on my channel. I will be coming out with some more MCU content. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video.